Well, you can even go back further than this second special session. You go back to the regular session, the House Bill 1, the General Appropriations Bill, the first appropriations bill from the regular session, ended up omitting and deleting $60 million in hospital, healthcare, and medical school funding that the House had appropriated. Those dollars, we sent over $72 million additional dollars that fully funded the hospitals. That was an amendment, that was an identical one to mine that ultimately ended up being offered by State Representative Katrina Jackson from Monroe, that we managed to get passed on the House side. That was in the House Bill 1 from the regular session that had $72 million in additional funding for the hospital system. It also would have helped the medical schools. That number ended up being reduced by $60 million by the time we got it back to the Senate.
Then, as succinctly as you can, walk me from the bill, the amendment you just described, to last week's Edwards administration saying, no, you only need $4 million.
Well, understand, you end up with the regular session ending. At that point, we're still $600 million short. That number ended up being adjusted up to $800 million. And so the purpose of the second special session, because we can't raise revenue in the regular session,
was to make up that difference.
Was to come in and make up that difference. And I helped to do that. That was my purpose in going, because I want to make sure, as I'm sure other members of the legislature as well, that those institutions that are most important to us back home with the folks that we represent, for me, that's the LSU Hospital or University Health now, and the LSU Medical School. So we made hard votes with the expectation that we're going to be able to direct those dollars to what has been identified as the need. As we heard the testimony for the supplemental appropriations bill, which is in the second special session, is House Bill 69 by Cameron Henry, chairman of the Appropriations Committee. That bill left the House with $26.8 million specifically appropriated for the LSU Medical School here in Shreveport. That number went from $26.8 million as it left the House. In the Senate Finance Committee, it was reduced by $16.8 million to $10 million. And then on the last day, as the Senate is about to take up on the Senate floor the various amendments that they want to make to the supplemental appropriations bill, and they're also trying to avoid going to conference committee as well. And so they want to put these particular amendments in and have the House simply come back and concur, because at that point you're not in a position to be able to amend or change unless it goes to conference. And that's when we went from $26.8 million to $10 million to $4 million with the noontime briefing for some members of the delegation.
With the promise that LSU Med School can make all this money by these agreements with local hospitals, which we have no agreements in place right now.
Correct. The agreements with local hospitals, and that $4 million, now that Medicaid has been expanded, can somehow effectively be leveraged into $36 million. Something that at this point is new, untried, untested, and certainly not what I expected when I was asked to come to Baton Rouge, make hard votes that none of us wanted to make, to generate additional revenue in order to be able to ensure the priorities for this state were effectively protected.
There's something bubbling undercurrent here that's going on with regard to this. Can you talk about it when we come back?
Sure.
Because there's a lot more to this, and a lot of people are saying there's other groups that want involved. And
let me phrase it this way: in your mind, is there some Game of Thrones stuff going on? Is that a poor analogy?
I think it's just straight on power politics that's usually driven and motivated by money.
More with State Representative Cedric Glover. We'll be right back. News Radio.
Smell a rat.
News Radio. That's Matt. News Radio 710 KEEL 818.
Okay, we're here at creditrepair.com. Recognized name industry solving credit report issues.
It's working. We're taking a break. I'm putting the phone down. We didn't hang out. There's no water in your fridge, by the way.
Oh, dang. And can you make a copy of that document he's got?
His office open?
Her office was not open last time I was down there.
Can you make a copy of the document he's holding?
I can. Do you want it right now?
Yes.
Oh, the water was in that fridge.
All I saw was
things in life that you really want, like a home,
coconut.
Yeah.
Just that side of it.
I apologize. I thought there were 2 or 3.
So don't let a low credit score.
Oh, our proclamation is ready.
And so what happens when they call?
Our proclamation is ready.
be fine.
Credit report, a free credit score.
What?
We have to go pick it up. Our proclamation is ready.
Really?
We have to go pick it up.
I have to go pick up my own proclamation? When he proclaimed it my day, he
Well,
brought
she'll
it to
bring
me.
it too.
Yeah,
But I mean, if you want it now, you can go get
No,
it.
I got it. It's August 12th. Good morning, 18 past 8 o'clock, News Radio 710 KEEL. Who was mayor? How dumb does this make me? In 96 when we started, was it
Bo Williams.
Bo Williams?
Bo.
That's what I was thinking.
Yep.
So we need to get Bo,
He's still
Hazel.
around.
and we need to get him, and we need to get Keith,
Keith.
and Ollie. So it'd be 4 mayors to come in and congratulate us. We've been
Get
through.
as many as you want.
We only need the 4 we've been through. Because we went from Bo to Keith to him to Miss Ollie.
Okay.
There you go.
And there's only been,
Thank you.
I guess 2 Bossier mayors, right?
Probably.
Low and-
See, we're still here.
Yeah. Don Jones for a minute. Well, that's way before your time, though.
That's back in the 80s.
Yeah, but
I've been through a bunch of mayors.
not that many. In Bossier, no, not that many.
Not that many in both.
No, it's not.
Right.
John Hussey was at my wedding.
To go 4 mayors, you got to go what? Marvin Anding, Don Jones, the Mint,
Yeah.
Dan Lowe.
Yeah.
And Nathan was right before that, wasn't it?
70s. Who that?
And Nathan was right before that.
That one, that's a name.
Oh,
The first one I remember was Andy. Marvin
and
Anding.
George Nathan was in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
I mean, that was.
When did you first start going to city council meetings?
I mean,
I'm-
Nathan was
I'm
a
here
dark
in
choice like
84.
figure. Only he ran Bossier City. I'm being
You
totally
were still in
serious.
school then.
Mm-hmm.
When did you finish high school?
83.
Okay.
So just out of high school.
Just a kid.
Neighborhood association meetings were probably my earliest.
Okay.
And then maybe police jury because Cooper Road wasn't in the city limits
Yeah.
until 78.
Remember Ann Stratton? Used to
Oh,
go
yeah.
down there too?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody told me she left millions.
Yes, she did.
Who
Well,
did she leave it to?
I think she left some of it to the NPC
Really?
that was used to help with the master plan.
Wow.
I never got the specific details on that, but
That's a
that
great story.
I think you remember Charles.
It was when you and Ernie were in that morning when she was on vacation, and I mean that was we got to do that again. That was awesome. And Ernie was I don't, and then he gets in there and he little motorman. He was awesome.
Back in his MO.
Huh?
They took me back in his MO.
But that's exactly the story you have going.
When he told that story, it's
Oh,
like, are you
do you know the
serious?
story?
No.
Emma and Mosley?
Is
Yes.
that literally you have to go? It was like an audience,
78 mayor's race, first
Yeah.
mayor's race in the new charter.
right?
Hannah against Hathaway, and
Wow.
he was on the Hannah team
Uh-huh.
that was being managed by McGowan.
Wow. How's Hathaway doing now? I haven't seen him in a long time.
Saw him at Dr. Jones's funeral from afar.
Stand by, ladies and gentlemen. 822 at News Radio 710 KEEL, online 710keel.com, radio pup after the smartphone. This this segment powered by, I'm a pretty big section myself. This segment powered by Abalone Door and Ironworks, raising garage door standards, one home at a time.
We are broadcasting live, by the way, on Facebook Live right now with State Representative Cedric Glover. Want to thank you for joining us. There are some underpinnings with regard to University Health and the LSU Med School. That there are folks who want to completely break this up and take over running of the med school and or hospital. What do you know? What can you share with us regarding facts?
Well, I'll say this. From my perspective, I was still in the mayor's office when this whole process started 3 years ago, or just a little over 3 years ago, 2012, under former Governor Jindal. And I was very dubious from the very beginning. Privatization could, in fact, potentially be something that could have some positive benefits, but I thought it was something that needed to have a much more orderly, transparent, and competitive process than what the governor was looking to put in place. And that is, he was looking to pick the partners with no process for competition. And I do not think that there was sufficient thought, consideration given to the impact on the existing state employees. From my perspective, it was politically driven by the governor's desire to want to take those 30+ thousand employees and no longer have them be state employees and be able to claim that as a political accomplishment of his administration. And so as this process started, I thought it was problem filled. And that the LSU board was going into a very dangerous direction in terms of how they handled it. There were some initial efforts, I think, to align the Shreveport Hospital with some folks who were close to the general administration. That ended up being problematic due to some other things that transpired involving Bruce Greenstein, the Jindal's former DHH secretary, who was forced to resign and ultimately ended up under indictment, and some other issues that were involved with that. And then there was some thought that the local Willis-Knighton chain might be able to step in, but even the leadership there acknowledged that there were antitrust issues involved. And then at that point, that's when the folks from the Biomedical Research Foundation stepped into the breach and became the contracted operator for the hospital. And that was, from my perspective at least, somewhat positive in that BRF has a decades-long history here in Shreveport, founded back in the 80s and 90s, specifically intended to help diversify the Shreveport area economy into the life sciences area, but was never a hospital manager or administrator.
Do you feel that any of those folks that you just mentioned a couple of seconds ago, do you feel that any of those people still behind the scenes are trying to make that happen, i.e. still trying to get control?
Well, certainly. I mean, there's obviously a power struggle that's at work here. What started off, what seemed to be a congenial relationship initially between LSU and the BRF has obviously soured to the extent that the LSU folks attempted to cancel the contract.
So who is right now in your mind standing there with their arms in a basket-like position, hoping that it falls into their person?
Well, the thought on the part of some folks that takes us back to the original discussion, and that is, if you're looking for why is it that what was identified by the House as at least a minimal need of $26.8 million, and that's less than what's actually needed, how that number could go from $26.8 million for the LSU Medical School in Shreveport to $10 million. To $4 million, some would say that part of what creates the circumstances, and it goes back to the old Rahm Emanuel saying of never let a crisis,
yeah, exactly,
never waste a good crisis. That if you end up putting both the medical school and the hospital here in Shreveport in fiscal circumstances that become so dire that you have to reach out to seek additional help, that you'll end up being able to find a way to effectively circumvent the current contract between BRF, LSU, the hospital, and what have you, and that gives you the ability to be able to step in, overcome some of the other issues like monopoly and antitrust and other things that right now are subject to litigation and in dispute and bouncing back and forth in terms of the undercurrent of this overall situation.
And who wants LSU Med, the hospital et al., to be in financial crisis?
Well, those folks who would want to be able to bring it under their control.
And those are?
Well, it's said that the intent is to create a situation where, despite the fact that you currently have 76+% market share on the part of Willis-Knighton, that if you end up with the hospital and the medical school in fiscal crisis, or fiscal exigency as the term goes, that at that point you have an answer to the federal antitrust issue that allows you to end up with greater market share for the local Willis-Knighton chain.
Tell me if I'm wrong. So somebody somewhere, tell me who those people are trying to create a financial crisis at LSU here in town so that Willis-Knighton can step up and say, thank God for us.
Well, here's my perspective. I'm understanding that the hospital and the medical school need money. That's why we're being called into session, in addition to some of the other unmet needs. And that I go along with the other 143 members of the legislature, and some of us in sufficient numbers make hard votes to be able to get our number in this special session. We didn't hit 600 million, we hit 294 million. It's my expectation as one of the folks who's made those hard votes, that we're going to be able to come away with the LSU Medical School and the LSU University Health Hospital System, as well as the other partner hospitals, with sufficient funding for them to be able to continue to fulfill their missions, meet their obligations, and be able to effectively lead. The other thing that goes along with this is that there have been efforts, because one thing in my estimation that this healthcare market needs more of, if we've got one operator that already has 76% market share, and that it's reported that healthcare reimbursement rates in this market are 2 to 3 times higher than what they are in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Monroe, because of that existing monopoly, that what we need is competition. It's also our understanding that there have been efforts on the part of the BRF folks to initiate and help to facilitate greater competition by bringing in other partners. There are members of this delegation who, I remember a year ago, poo-pooed on that idea. I don't think that's the right thing. I think competition is a good thing, that we need more providers in this area who bring resources, who have assets that can help us end up with a more competitive environment and a more technically advanced environment.
We've got the news break right now. Can you hang on one more short
Certainly.
segment, because I'd like to tie all this up as best we can.
And I got to ask you about how do you operate on $4 million?
News Radio 710 KEEL 829, local news. Erin standing by.